Dr. Demento came by my office today. I had a chance to sit down and talk with him, and Wes, my videographer, just happened to be next door. I told him, pull out a camera, let's have a little chat with Dr. Demento about the songs that he plays. Not only is he a guy who plays these novelty songs, but he's also a well-known music historian.
Late 1950s, and I realized right away that it was as exciting as rock and roll, but deeper. So that's what got me into blues. And
the song in question is the Ballad of the Green Berets. Are you familiar with that song?
Very familiar with it, yeah.
So Sergeant Barry Sadler, yes. He was the guy that did the song. Now, it was #1 for 6 weeks on the charts. Yeah. Do you remember playing this song, and what was the overall feeling in the country?
I did not play it at that time myself.
You didn't?
No, I wasn't out on the air yet in 1966.
Okay, but you were aware of the song.
But I heard it. You couldn't escape it for a couple of months at least.
And being a younger guy at a classic rock station, I used to get annoyed when I would hear that song. And yeah, for those of you that don't know, some of my younger audience, I'll just play this for you. It's a pretty good song. I mean, for wartime.
Fighting soldiers from the sky, fearless men who jump and die, men who mean just what they say, the brave men of the Green Berets, silver wings upon their chest. These are men, America's best. 100 men will test today, but only 3 win the Green Beret.
I mean, it's a classic song, don't get me wrong. I mean, with all the anti-war songs, how was it that this song made #1, do you think, in your opinion?
Well, it was patriotic, yeah. There was a lot of controversy over the war in those days. There were people who were very strongly against it, and there were people who were strongly for it, and then there were people that just felt it's what this country is doing. I'm American, right or wrong. We'll stand up for America. And so you had a lot of people who were potential audiences for this song. It's stirring. It's set to a march beat. It's been a while since a march has been #1 on the charts, but
right.
That's a perfect march beat to it.
Well, Barry Sadler actually, after he did this song, he tried to be a country singer, and it kind of failed miserably. I was just curious because I knew that as I was reading and doing some investigation into the song, that perhaps one of the reasons why it was #1, not just because of the fact that it was a patriotic song, when it was being played amongst the, We Got to Get Out of This Place by Eric Burdon or Barry McGuire's Eve of Destruction, but it also was bought up. The Pentagon bought a bunch of these, and they distributed them to radio stations. Do you think that made a difference as to why it was #1 for 6 weeks on the charts or 5 weeks?
Couldn't have hurt.
Is that how it's done, though?
Well, yeah. Billboard counts radio play along with sales, or at least they did in those days. And,
right.
But it sold lots of copies too. One of which somebody bought and kept for a while, and then it found its way to a used record shop where you got it for $0.25. There was a time when top 40 stations routinely played novelty records at any given time, roughly from the beginning of top 40 up till the mid-60s. At any given time, there would usually be at least one novelty record on the charts. So that meant that the top 40 station would play it every 2, 3, 4 hours. But then that kind of thudded to a halt right around the time the Ballad of Green Berets came out. After 67, there are fewer novelty hits. There are different reasons for that. One of them is that rock and roll in general started taking itself more seriously. You had the Beatles going from I Want to Hold Your Hand to Abbey Road. You had bands like Pink Floyd coming on. Pink Floyd is wonderful, but they're dead serious.
And I thought, how could a pro-war song be so popular when, it turned into this, time where we're listening to The Eve of Destruction by Barry McGuire, and the production wasn't all that great. The message was kind of off, but then I realized, well, it came out in 66. It was #1 for a few weeks. Hundreds of anti-war protest songs created during the 60s as well, and, well, pro-Vietnam War songs were few and far between, and especially a song that patriotic. I mean, Barry Sadler's Ballad of the Green Berets was the most successful song of this type because it topped the American singles charts for 5 weeks in 1966. The album called Ballad of the Green Berets, would be one of the fastest selling in the RCA label's history at the time, reaching the million mark in the first month of its release. However, the popular press will tell you that Sadler made the song, that he made the song and he made it work on his own merits, that he was a talented guy, but you figure out that later on he tried to be a country singer and failed miserably at it. I mean, this pro-war hit song was released. He got a lot of kudos for it, but he wasn't very successful as a singer on his own. And then you find out what really happened, why it was number one, is because the Pentagon and a bunch of corporate interests bought up the record. And so the military branch of the government bought up so many copies of the song, and pro-war columnists would write about it, extol the virtues of the song. It remained number one for 5 weeks, and it was also the theme song for John Wayne's Green Beret movie. I mean, Sadler had a very tragic life, of course, because, he served time in prison because he shot a guy, and then he moved to Guatemala City, and it was there that he was fatally shot in the head. He was in a taxi cab, took a blow to the head with a gun, and people say either he committed suicide in the back of this taxi, or that he shot himself accidentally, or that he was assassinated because he was arming the Contras. So there's a number of types of stuff about this guy that really don't add up to a number one single. It just, went downhill after that. So, sure, a lot of people bought the song, but you couldn't dance to it, and you couldn't play it at parties, and it wasn't one of those songs that say, hey, I want to go hear Barry Sadler's March of the Green Berets. You don't light up a sploof and listen to that song. It's just not something you do in the 60s. So I just was always curious as to why it was played. And then I realized why it was a number one song, because the Pentagon and a number of other control groups decided, hey, if we buy enough of these records, it'll wind up on the Billboard album charts at number one. And that is what happened. That's why that song was number one, because it was a propaganda piece that needed to get support for the war, because it was falling apart during the time of President Johnson.
Getting back to Green Berets, you ever hear the Ballad of the Yellow Berets?
No.
That was a very early record by Bob Seger, who later, of course, went on to considerable fame as a rock and roll singer. But that's a political record, and it's about war protesters, and it's not very nice to them.
Didn't Seger get banned off of the Smothers Brothers because he tried to sing a song and CBS said, you're not going to sing this protest song? And
it might have been that song, for all I know.
Okay.
Yes.
So what are some of the best songs in the Funny Five now?
Well, a lot of new stuff. There's you don't necessarily hear it getting mass media exposure, but there are people who are very dedicatedly pursuing the path of doing funny music. Weird Al you hear about all the time, but there are lots of other people who do parodies and original songs too. There's all different styles. Nerdcore is pretty big right now, which is nerdcore is influenced partly by hip-hop, but it's all subjects that appeal to the kind of people who go to science fiction fan conventions, geeks and people like that, people who proudly call themselves geeks.
Take you to a galaxy far, far away. I'll move you with the force with my Jedi ways. Chill with my crew, hiding from Darth Vader. I got mad skills with my new
Well, Dr. Demento, it's been a pleasure having you on the program.
Same here.
You're one of my idols, and I thank you so much for all of your contributions to music, to popular music, to all the music that is funny and interesting, and I'm really glad that we had an opportunity to chat today.
Oh, me too. Don't forget to stay demented!
We know that the secret that has been drilled into our minds is that terrorists and even war veterans are a real threat now, according to Homeland Security, and once again, an entertaining television show that pushes that theme, well, it gets awards. People want to see that kind of stuff for some reason. They want to participate in it. Argo.
I got an idea.
They're a Canadian film crew for a science fiction movie.
I fly into Tehran. We all fly out together as a film crew. I need you to help me make a fake movie.
So you want to come to Hollywood and act like a big shot without actually doing anything?
Yeah.
You'll fit right in.
Ben Affleck won Best Movie and Best Director. And what this movie does is it glorifies the CIA, and Ben Affleck spoke with the highest praise for the CIA when he got the award. Best Actress went to Jessica Chastain of Zero Dark 30.
You really believe this story? Osama bin Laden?
Yeah.
What part convinced you?
Her confidence.
If you're right, the whole world's gonna win in on this.
Now, that's a movie that I vilified and said, hey, don't go. It's been vilified for propagandizing the use of torture and rewriting history about Osama bin Laden. What this tells me, and what it tells us, what it should be a clue to everyone, is that the military-industrial intelligence complex is now playing a bigger role in our lives, which proves that the police state is something that, with gradual coercion, will be embraced by the American people as a normal part of life. Because I can promise you that there will be more movies produced with the blessing of the Pentagon and the intelligence apparatus that will demonstrate a new focus on the use of drone technology, gun control, spy work, you name it, illegal wiretapping, privacy issues, medical surveillance issues, eugenics, more focus on environmental crisis in films, the threat of extraterrestrials, which, of course, is another way to recruit young men and women for the military. It used to be the military would hate doing these films, but after Battle L.A., that was a big recruitment for the Marines. So we must question now why we are now embracing the glory of the militarized police state, because this was the norm for communist countries and other countries that would parade missiles and military in the public square to show their might in the face of danger. We may not see this yet, but we are about to notice it, just how pervasive the extended war mentality is creeping into our entertainment. How easy is it now for the simulation to win out over the historic fact? As we question current events and the way they are presented, shouldn't we be a little bit more vigilant, aware of how Hollywood will most definitely generate fraudulent stories so they can pass them as reality?
Sir, my radar's totally dead.
Prepare to fire.
Sir, which weapons?
All of them.
They're laughing at you. This is the propaganda they're pushing on you, and it's sending a message. It is a meme that is floating out there, and I think the question is valid. Do you think that having the CIA and military intelligence being so pervasive in films and TV and radio, do you think that's a healthy thing for a country? Because I remember when I was a kid, I used to think that the communists and the Nazis and all these people, they had the military-industrial complex as their way of life. That's why all the guys wore uniforms. That's why all we ever saw were the goose-stepping goons that would follow Brezhnev. I mean, these were the things I saw when I was a kid and thought, I don't want my country to be that way. But now we're becoming that country. People always ask me, well, how do we fight the New World Order, Clyde? Well, here's one way to fight the New World Order. And that is not to support blatant rewrites of history in movies like Zero Dark 30. The question of how far the intelligence agencies will go to stage reality is anyone's guess, and many people are starting to question whether or not the stage show ends on the movie set. I want to point out a sick irony, and then I'm going to go to the calls. The movie Argo. You know what the movie Argo is about? It's about how the CIA is capable of setting up a phony film studio, hire fake actors and producers to make a phony science fiction film in Iran. This way, the real world can be fool the observers into thinking that they're witnessing a real event, all this for a political outcome. Think about that. They're setting up a phony studio. They're setting up fake actors and producers to create a phony scenario, or they're doing something that looks like it's real, but it's not real, just so they can fool people in the real world into believing they're there for another purpose. Now, how far-fetched is it to speculate now that all the events we've been seeing in the media lately have been staged or at least beefed up so the public can form a reaction that the directors want you to have for a political outcome? 9/11. It was pointed out just before we went to break. 9/11. What about that? We saw how it was handled. Sure, the event happened, but did it happen the way you thought it happened? To say it's an all-out hoax is kind of discrediting yourself. It wasn't a hoax, but it certainly had elements of Hollywood thrown in, much like Independence Day or any other movie. And all the predictive program you saw in The Matrix and all the other movies talking about September 11th, and then finally, we had Dean Haglund on this program talking about this because Dean Haglund, of course, was the actor that was in The Lone Gunman. And the first pilot of The Lone Gunman showed a plane, a commercial airlines jet, being used to plow into the World Trade Center. And yet Condoleezza Rice and everybody else in intelligence said, we had no idea that a plane could be used as a weapon, even though in the time of President Clinton in the Olympics, they were worried that the Atlanta Games were going to have some sort of a plane crash or they had a no-fly zone over the Olympic Stadium at the time. But they lied to you and said they had no idea. And anymore, we see these types of things happen in movie theaters before they happen in real life. So someone is in the director's chair dictating these things, and then when we see something like Sandy Hook happen, we don't hear the direct story. We hear cover-ups. We hear that certain people died at certain times and how they had certain websites up 3 days before the deaths, and you hear all these things going on. You say to yourself, well, wait a minute, this is like some Hollywood film. How dare we criticize people who say, I don't get this? This is like something that the CIA has staged. It's like when they took Lee Harvey Oswald's head and put it on the body of the guy with 2 rifles and made it look real, and it was all faked. They question it because it just does not gel with what they're seeing. And there's nothing wrong with doing that because we know that in most cases, in a lot of cases anymore today, the CIA is sitting in the director's chair, and they're going to be handed Oscars and Golden Globes and whatever other awards are out there that they can use as a cudgel to remind you that you support the military-industrial complex, the intelligence complex, the intelligence arm of the CIA, NSA, Homeland Security. You support this by going to these films, and then the Academy votes on them and gives them top honors. This is how pervasive it has become in our lives. And I don't think it's healthy, and I'm asking you, do you think it's healthy that this is going on? I mean, Argo is about the CIA setting up a phony scenario so that people will believe they're doing a film there. and yet we go after people and say they're sick and demented for even questioning 9/11 or questioning Aurora and why that Batman somehow plays a part in this whole scenario, connecting the dots with Newtown, Sandy Hook. And now here we are back at Sandy Hook again with what we reported last night, how reality falls apart and how we don't have, and we can't have with all this manufactured crises, a form of discernment. It's difficult to have now. Question reality. Always, always question reality. 888-673-3700. That's 888-673-3700. We'll be back. Don't go away.
Once again, I'm so excited that we had Dr. Demento on the program and that he was able to be a part of this show, talking about propaganda, talking about the song Green Berets. And also remember, drdemento.com, and stay demented. And thank you for watching Ground Zero Disclosure.